big hey now to everybody out there. Woohoo! It's another T-Share Friday. T-Share Friday. Just watching this immutable contract run and how it operates and what we're seeing out there. There we are. See some people in the chat. See some questions in here. All right, we'll get to a couple of these things. I see you, Will Downs. What's shaking? What's shaking, bacon? So you guys may have noticed there have been a slight increase in penalties being paid out through emergency end stakes recently. I know we saw, I think it was a guy yesterday or a lady. Looks like they may be emergency end staked an entire ladder, and all big payday stakes, and so there's quite a bit of penalties. They still got some HEX out of it, but they paid quite a bit in penalties. Just looking at some rough numbers, just to give you an idea of what's going on. It's pretty normal to see, 5, 6, 7 million in penalties per day. This is a little special indicator that I have that's just looking at the 28-day average, which is somewhere around the 5,000 level. Look at all time. 5 million level, all-time averages, about something around 4.8 million HEX being sent out in penalties per day. Look at the last year, somewhere around that 5.1 million number. So all pretty normalized. If we look at the daily chart, you can see that our penalties are way down here in that range on average, just eyeballing it, right? So just you can kind of see this little line at the bottom. It's hard to see here, but right at that five level. So not out of the norm. But then we have specific days where, back in January 5th, we had 10 million. I don't have yesterday's data loaded here yet, I don't believe. So we're not seeing the full extent to the penalties maybe from yesterday from those stakes. So we can go back and look at all these, but just to give people an idea what's happening in terms of the amount of penalties that are coming in per day. Let's see what ETH looks like. Very similar. Not really. Not really a surprise there. Let's see if we go take a look at what we're seeing for a very specific time period on the chart, which is October of 29 through April 2030. So what's the big deal here? Well, these primarily were what we call legacy stakes. Johnny Chaos likes to call them legacy stakes, that were made for very long periods of time during the first year and a month of HEX, maybe the first year of HEX anyways. And at one point, the stakes that were going to be ending in that time period dominated the chart in terms of the number of T-shares that would be expiring in that period. Big amounts of them in October, November 29. Almost over 500,000 T-shares per month that were part of this legacy grouping. And then plus anybody who had staked on top of that, and then another couple in February, in March, that would have been pretty high. So when we looked at those numbers and we went back and looked at it, overall 2.5 million T-shares roughly in this period of time that were part of this legacy staking. And that was about 8,200 stakes that were made. Now to date, what I've been doing is tracking these, and we've seen almost 200,000 of those T-shares emergency end staked, and that's 942 stakes. When we look at the chart month over month in this grouping of what's been coming out, we did have back in January of 25, we did have around 2,000 come out, as a peak. April, another peak at right around 3,500. This past December, we had almost 3,300, and then things have kind of fallen off as far as emergency end stakes in this grouping a little bit. It kind of backs up what we're seeing overall. So quite often when people are asking me about capitulation and whether or not people are capitulating out of hex staking by ending their stakes, we're not seeing that. Not seeing that. And that's kind of crazy that we're not seeing that much coming out. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to watch that and see. It really makes me wonder quite a bit. Conspiracy theory, put on your put on your tinfoil hats, right? Because in the current environment, and at least what I intuit from listening to you guys and listening to X and seeing what people post in the Telegram and whatnot, it would lead me to believe there's massive capitulation, right? People just want out, but I'm not seeing it. So then that makes you wonder, well, okay, so if we do see individuals capitulate, right, and they rack themselves out, but we're not seeing like these huge number shifts, right? That you would kind of expect to see. At least I would have expected to see. So then that makes me wonder. Of the 300,000 or so, maybe it's a little more, maybe it's closer to 500,000 stakes that are made that are out there. Just who are those people? Maybe it's us. If anybody's getting here watching this, you might be watching this stream because you're all in on Hex and you plan to stay in Hex. But where are these? Who else is that? Who else is out there doing that? I'll go look at another thing here to show you, having to do with the T-shares. This is our future. What's happening way out in 2040, 2041. You can see we're just seeing just kind of like plugging along 1 to 2,000 new T-shares being created out Quattro Cinco. We go look at our payout per T-shares though. We'll dial this up a little bit into current time frames. See what this looks like as we look at it. At one time, with payouts, this little spot right here, this October of 29 through through the March, April of 2030, this used to be pretty dominating on the chart, but it's not, because now the OA has changed things up a bit in what it's doing and has so many stakes out there. It kind of like tamps down on everything else that we see. But at one point, this was going to be like a big change, right? And now it's a little change that's out there. So anyways, just looking at the overall, it does make me wonder, what the story is, and are there a lot more OA stakes that I don't know about? Are there a lot more stakes in one or more hands that are diamond, and they're not mercy and staking? Because otherwise I can't understand why they wouldn't be doing it, right? Based on what I'm hearing. And so anyway, in any case, what it kind of leads us to believe maybe is that we just don't have that much exposure as I would expect to mercy and staking, and that the hex that can be put on the market has been put on the market, sold out, and either for speculation reasons, people holding liquid, or they're continuing to keep their stakes and build stakes. But again, not seeing it hit the market. Let's take a look here, see what Will Dan was asking. He was asking about the payout per T-share once the March OA stake ends. It's a good question. I don't know. Anybody have any guesses about what it'll change? We'll calculate it here on stream, but anybody have any guesses on what that'll change? If you want to throw it in the chat, go ahead and throw it in the chat. So what's the best way to go after that and go look at that? Well, let's see. Let me go to one of these charts just so we can see what we got for the number of T-shares. It's one of my older numbers. Let's see where we at. 227. That's now. Okay, so you can see what we have for T-shares. 43.29 million. 43.29 million right now, roughly. And so, and that is creating a certain amount of payout. We can kind of shortcut this and go look at, let's see, let me pull up a chart. Let's go look at this, the leaderboards, and these are estimated payouts in 30 days. So we have this big stake that ends on the 17th, the last day of earning rewards is the 16th. And then on the 17th, it could be ended or somebody could get a count it. So that's one of the two things that could happen. And okay, so we're going to be looking at the 16th. And I want to know how many T-shares are out there. So let's go do that. We'll take a look and see what we think our T-shares are that might come out in that period of time. Let's see here. Close that guy out. Let's go look. T-shares expire rate. No, that's not the one I want. We'll go HEX T-shares. Okay, so we see this. I'm going to just change up my my expiring T-share counts here, and just take a look at what's been expiring so we can kind of get there. We'll go down one level, see what this looks like, and let's go. We'll do it this way. I want to drill down into my next level here. All right, in 2026. All right, so we're going. Yeah, I apologize for how it looks. We got 1.1 million, for the sake of argument. 1.1 million T-shares that will come out in March, and so let's assume that the OA does not restake. So what would we see in terms of a reduction in T-shares is 1.1 million divided by 43. This is not exact math, 43.29. So we're going to see something like a 2.5% reduction in the total number of T-shares. Somebody can check my math on that, right? And so roughly, I would expect to see something like a 2.5, two and something increase maybe in payout, but because we're going to have the same amount of HEX coming out. It's just going to be shared over 2.5% less in the in terms of the T-shares that would collect on that, right? And so our payout, and for sake of argument, is 1.56. All right, so 1.56 per T-share, currently times 43 million, 2, 9, oh. All right, so 43.29 million. So it's something around a daily, and we can actually go get the real number, but it's right around 67.5 million per day. 67 million per day that come out and get paid out. And so if you divide that number, just assume it's constant for a minute, and we're going to divide that by the number of T-shares we expect to have, which would be 42,190,000. All right, so that gives us a payout of around 1.6 HEX per T-share. And so a lot of people right away, they're like, oh man, this is it's no big deal, right? I mean, it's 0.04 more HEX per T-share. And so a lot of people will boo-hoo that and be like, that's not a big deal. But it still is a percentage increase, right? And so this is kind of like this boil the frog situation, where what it appears to be is not a big deal, but it's a 2.5% increase roughly in the amount of HEX that you get out. And of course, the APRs will now follow that as well, right? So your APR will bump up a little bit. And now we don't know what the OA is going to do. The OA could be ending that stake and restaking. Don't know. We're going to watch and see. But for at least that day, unless that does happen, restaking happens, what we'll end up with is an increase. It'll increase. Ah, there you go. Will Downs already had the answer. He was just asking. He was just asking. There you go. He already had it. But yeah, so I mean, you can definitely do these calculations by hand if you need to, and just get kind of like a rough idea. Um, look at the T-share rate next and what happens with that. Now, a lot of people make the assumption that because the OA is doing some big stakes, that we're going to see some sort of big change in the share rate, but that is not true. It could be true, but it's not true in this case. It's not true in this case. I mean, we're expecting the OA has these stakes that are going to come out right around here. You don't see any major big jump ups or increases here. We don't see that prediction. And some people will say, well, why? Well, because we have a lot of legacy stakes that are out there that earned 400 or 500% ROI, and they've already pushing up the T-share rate. So the OA stake that's been staked for a year doesn't even have a chance to push the rate up, and so it won't. It won't. It's just not going to be too much higher. Now, that being said, a year ago the T-share rate was a lot less. So the OA cannot get the same number of T-shares for the same number of days, even if it stakes all of its HEX reward and principal. It can't get the same number of T-shares. But what it could do is go out longer to get the same number of T-shares. But I find that to be highly unlikely that that'll be the case. And so let's go look at a different chart real quick. We'll see. Let's see if I have my chart up here. These are not the one I wanted. This is the one I wanted right here. We look at our payouts. And I'm just going to take off, ignore the 30 days for a minute up here. I'll do 12 months, but 12-month look ahead. You see how March just dwarfs everything else going all the way out for a year. Now I'm going to take my filter off on this thing. And I'm going to say, boom, give me the whole thing here. And, let's do... Oh, yeah, I got rid of all the dates. And I want to do relative date. I want to do it in the next 5,555 days. How about that? Boom. All right. So this won't look super huge on the screen because the way I have it set up, I've got estimated HEX payouts all the way up here at 400 million. So it's not going to be perfect on the screen. But what I do hope you can see is down here at the bottom, when I rendered it out this way, you can see this 37 billion coming out, almost 37 billion this March. Well, there's another one for 35 billion coming out next March. And then the following March, 36 billion, 40 billion, 50 billion. So I don't know what the OA will do. But it would seem likely to me that it'll probably reserve, because it already has its ladder set up, right? It'll probably reserve its HEX, or maybe go out into 36, 37 period, 38, 39, or maybe beyond 2040. You can see it also has a boatload of HEX coming out in 2040. So maybe it'll start building rungs past that, but I don't think there's any hurry for it to do it. I would think the OA would probably want to reserve the HEX for use later, right, to adjust, because now it'll have more HEX and it could do something different with it. Just kind of like digging into that a little bit. Let's see if we got any questions about that. Boom, boom. I see Tom Kane, Duke Caboose. Jet A Soul still here. I see you. All right. Now, back over to our chart is here. 30-day look ahead. So 30-day look ahead still looks like we're heading that 45K range. Really would have liked to have seen that back in November. But hey, if there's anybody who is interested in staking the opportunity to have gotten, T-shares below the 45. There's a small group of us that are super committed to this idea of, and you may be included. You're included if you're listening. You're probably included, but we're dedicated to this idea of maintaining T-shares and having T-shares in the future. So you do have people, staking when they can, what they can, and going out further. Um, Looking at the 60-day, we're clearly will be in that 45 range. We'll have more time for stakes to end, and then we'll push closer to the 46K range after that. These flat spots here, there's like this big stake for, um, for Pulse Chain, or a big stake, but this big change in Pulse Chain, which would bring it something like from 44.7 up to 44 or 45.5 ish. So that's about a 700 change. Is dependent on the stake actually ending. And so if the person doesn't come back and end, then it won't cross like this. It'll just kind of like follow maybe a similar path as what we have in fuchsia pink here for the Ethereum side. But it's likely it will. But we'll see. It doesn't really matter that much in the overall. What we know is as we just continue to look, right, there will be other stakes that'll come out that'll change it eventually, and it creates this laddering effect of the T-share rates, right? And really, they're so close between the two chains. It really doesn't really not that much of a difference. Different profiles for users, they vary sometimes a little bit differently, but we're still going to be shooting towards 50,000, end of 26, and maybe 55,000 end of 27. Now, my models, I do repeat this a lot with people, but I'll just keep saying it. These are conservative models. It built into this is the assumption the OA is going to do some restaking. So what happens if the OA doesn't do any restaking and we don't see a surge? Well, this is likely to be on the low end. The 49,675 will be on the low end. Now, why would it be on the low end? Well, as we were just kind of went through the calculations, you're going to see a 2.5% bump in rewards if the OA does not restake. And so if you see a 2.5% bump in rewards, per T-share, then stakes that could make changes will have more HEX that they've earned, which will drive the T-share rate up in the calculation just a little bit. It won't be exactly 2.5%, but it'll be something, right? It'll go up. And so it's likely that this number, and we'll come back and look at it week over week, but this number will probably boost up a little bit based on that. And then the longer out and the more opportunity there is, for stakes to earn that extra reward, these numbers will be higher. So yeah, I mean, crypto by definition, high risk, high reward possibility. And, so yeah, I mean, obviously you can lose a lot of money if you're putting value into something that never comes up in price. And so you have to be careful and do your own research, yada, yada, yada. Boom. I like this hypothetical roll down. Man, I wish I could have been the OA, but here's the hypothetical. You were the OA. Instead of doing the ladder as you did, you stake it all Quattro Cinco and forget payout for this scenario. Now you emergency end stake on day one of Quattro Cinco. How much comes back to you as the OA? A lot comes back. Yeah, and I think Jay Soul hit it, on the head there. So anytime there's a penalty, 50% of the penalty automatically goes back to the OA. It's written in the code that way. Now, in your scenario, there's no ladder. It all just went Quattro Cinco, right? And so then we're going to assume based on time served, which is 1 day, right? That all of it's going to be penalized, and so half of that would go to the OA directly. Then the other half would be spread. against all the other users that are in the system. But the OA didn't do that, did not do that. So they do have a ladder. It is spread. And so the answer is different in reality if they decide to do, let's say this new bunch that comes out, it wants to distribute that out, right? The 35-ish billion or whatever. And it does that by creating a Quattrocinco, right? Some people have talked about this and this idea. So it creates a Quattrocinco and it does what you say. It does emergency end stake the next day. Well, I believe roughly, the number would be this: 50% of the penalties would, of course, still go to the OA because it's built into the contract. And then something like 80 to 90% of all the other penalties that get paid out would go to the OA because the OA has so many of the T-shares, right? And so it would be maybe, be a few percentage points, several percentage points of the total would go out to the stakers. So that's the way to distribute the HEX. And I don't know that would happen. Again, can't know because the OA doesn't say, right? Never said. Don't know. Have to watch what happens. Everything we see is trailing indicators of what the OA does. But yeah, Johnny Chaos Theory is the random pinata of emergency end stakes that pay back users by giving them extra HEX, right? And in an environment where just staking, you can't get very much, right? I mean, relatively, right? But get extra payout, for that day increases the number. All right, I see the TAM out there. All right, boom, boom, boom. Oh, and let's see. Yeah, so let's be really clear, Will, when we talk about the other 50%. So with the penalties and when they're paid out, often when you look at it, it's hard for people to really see what's happening. But it goes to an address. 50% goes to an address, which is the OA address. The other 50% is noted in the contract, right? So you can go to the contract, run the daily global datas, and see what the penalties were. And then the payout is calculated there as well. And you can see what the payout is for the day. So that other 50% gets distributed as rewards to all of the remaining staked shares. That's where that goes. And so then that gets, so you would take whatever that amount is, divided by the number of T-shares, and everybody for that day gets a little bit of bump, right, per T-share. Yeah, and the 50% is, it comes from the calculations, but going forward, it's just for the payouts. Yeah. Yeah, it does, right? Because your payout is based on initially payout of HEX per day is a calculation, and rough, I'll try to give it to you from memory. It basically goes as, okay, how much HEX has ever been minted? How much HEX has ever been minted? And then it multiplies that by a constant, a number that roughly equates to 3.69% divided by 365. But they use a constant so that it's super close, but they have a very specific number. And so that's how it determines to start with what the base payout is. That's how it determines the base payout. And then the penalties that get paid are on top of that. And then that's divided, that total is divided by the number of shares, and that gives you payout per share. And then if you divide that by, or multiply that by trillion, you can get your payout per T-share. And so where can we go see some information about that? Let's go look at the base payouts and you'll see what I'm getting at. with this. And so when we go look, let's pull up a chart. I'm going to pull up a chart. I'm going to say, let's go look at the payouts. All right. So when I'm looking into the future and I'm just looking at the numbers that are out there, it's nice and clean. It's not all dirtied up by everything that's going on. Trying to figure out where. Let me pop this up this way. So sometimes I forget where they are on this list. All right. So I'm going to do payout per T-share. All right. So this looks super clean, right? Like just edging up, edging up, edging up. Then we have this big cliff in 2040 where the OA sticks in. But let me take out the dates. Let me go back date-wise. Now it doesn't look so clean, right? And so what I have here in gold is the is what I would consider to be the base forecast payout. So it's base, no penalties included, because I'm not including the penalties in that. Because I want to. Again, my preference. I know a lot of other people have different preferences, but my preference is to be a little bit more conservative on it. All right, so now let's make this dirty. We want to go to, let's go 2025, and we're going to do April 1st, 2025. All right, now do that, and then I'm going to change this guy to, let's go back down to 2020. 20 is good. We'll go the first of that. All right, so see how in gold again we have the the forecast, right? But when you drill in down here and you start looking at the individual days, it's all over the place, man. Right? And we can see that if I go down even further, further. Let's see where we're at. And you can see, there's some days where it's just baseline, the 1.5, 1.55, 1.56, 1.57, 1.58. But then you have these other days where there were big penalties. There were big penalties. And usually because people do the emergency, they do the emergency index. That's what causes that. There's not as much penalty coming from late stakes because there's lots of incentive for people to good account them, right? So, and you can good account anybody else's stake if they don't come back and end it. And the communist protocol has a bounty that you get paid for doing that, and so people are doing it, and so you don't see it. But so you see these big any time we're going above base, this is really showing us what the emergency end stakes are, right? And in like, the nerds like me, I get excited about, 2.77 hex per T-share. But other people say, well, that's like one extra hex, and hex is like 0.2 of a penny. So what's the big deal, right? Per T-share. I would need millions of T-shares for that to be valuable. But that's at the current prices, right? And so. But for people who are focused on units, these are good payout days. They're good payout days, right? And then with the idea that perhaps someday in the future, they'll be up there in price. Let's see what else we got in here. All right, so I hope that answers the questions that you had. Take a look here. I think T-shares extra crypto will become extremely rare after 2030 to accumulate. Yeah, they will be. They're already getting rare, right? And so we got some time here where the T-share rate is just going to be going up, and we're not getting the participation. And you say, well, wait a minute, Crispy, if we're not getting the participation, how can the T-share rate go up? Well, I didn't say we're getting zero participation. What I'm saying is people are not getting as many T-shares while they're cheaper in terms of hex. So the T-shares don't exist, right? And so people aren't getting them, but the rate's going to go up 5,000 a year or something, right? And so it's always going to cost more hex to get more. And so you run that all the way out into the time frame you're talking about, 2030. When we're looking at those numbers, I mean, it could be a lot more. It could be a lot more hex, to be able to, to get a T-share. And yeah. And if you combine that with price and action, T-shares will be pretty rare. But users get to decide all that. Yeah, I don't. Here's a question from Will Down about how did RH determine we needed to have about 650 billion total supply of hex. I don't know. I don't know how he came up with those numbers, man. Exactly. Might have just been rough. Been kind of like a rough sketch number. But I mean, you go back and listen to his videos, old ones. You can kind of divine from that the 80-20 principle, the 90-10 principle. The idea that you need to, by having a great amount of the tokens, you can ensure that you can control the market and protect the market. Kind of like anti-whale-ish type of stuff. So that type of stuff. Yeah, and then you're also saying, hey, if Hex has similar price action to BTC in the future, it'll be extremely difficult to get the same yield. Early bird gets the worms. Yeah, that's where that's kind of what I'm thinking too with it. Now, of course, right? Due diligence. Everybody do your own research. But I was talking to another guy yesterday. A couple of different people yesterday. We were talking about. Crypto norm versus, belief driven stuff. Bitcoin certainly took its whacks over the years, and got beat down pretty good many times. So many times it was dead, and all the rest. But as a community, now maybe that's changed now, and it's a little warped with Wall Street in there and everything. But extreme belief and holding and making it rare provided an opportunity for the people who do want to, speculate, right? See prices go up, prices go down, do the trading, right? And all that came together, and we see that there's a lot of value stored into the Bitcoin ecosystem, perceived value at the very least, right? And so there is something to belief, right? And if there are enough people moving in the same direction and putting value into something, prices go up. I mean, that's how it is with that. So it can happen. It can happen. I don't know what'll happen though, but we'll see. Sure. We'll see for sure. For sure. Will's talking about 38% APY. Yeah, I mean, it can go back there eventually. Originally we kind of settled into that for a while. Yeah, and not me says, if centralized ownership was a design feature to protect price. Well, yeah, I'm not speaking for the OA, so I don't know what the OA specifically doesn't do, why it's designed that way. But you're asking how low does it go for how long before we write it off? Yeah, that's a concern, right? With any type of thing. No, I think some of us are in the camp of never writing it off, right? So whatever happens, we'll be in and continue to stake. But when I was talking a little bit earlier, if you were on, we talked a little bit earlier about capitulation out. I mean, it doesn't it doesn't seem to me that there are many people that can capitulate or will capitulate at this point. I mean, why wouldn't they have already done it? Why would you decide at the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the prices? That now is the time. Now is the time. Now there'll be some individual things, sure. But could be the greatest comeback ever. We'll see. Yeah, Tom Kane's asking about 100 T-shares and a staking ladder over the course of 15 years. Yeah, it's all up to the individual what their capability is. Let's take a look real quick and see so we can remind everybody what the future looks like. Um, Probably should update this to give a better view of what it looks like non-OA. I just don't like track of the OA stuff, man. It's just like it's a lot of work to do the thousands and thousands of addresses and whatnot that are there. Um, but it could be kind of useful. I think. Let's see. I don't want to do drawdown. T-shirts expiring. Let's see. Let's go to my list. Here's the leagues drawdown. So that's what we'll look at here. So these are all kind of like rough number-ish. Um, but it does include the OA stakes now. So it's kind of a little bit weak. But when we go out to 2041, right? So 2041, you know, a whale position is 74 T-shirts, right? So you have a very strong position, and pretty much anything in my view, having T-shares that you have in place in these years, having anything above 100 is probably pretty good spot to be, particularly when you get post 2038, 2039 ish, because there really just isn't, we're just not seeing the people staking out there. And so these numbers are kind of warped by the fact that the OA has so many T-shares, year over year, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, it's always up to the individual what they can do and what they're interested in. And for some really extreme R&R, I mean, like it's like 300 and if I say R&R, I mean risk reward. It's like 333x to get to all-time high on HEX. Now I know that a lot of people be like, "Oh, wait, it's not going to happen now." Well, maybe it won't happen now, right? Whatever. But just looking at it from a risk reward, somebody can allocate, $1,000 into a system, and it would be life-changing money when HEX goes back to all-time high, whether that's in 3 years or 7 years, right? So it's a pretty big bump. Um, yeah, yeah. So I think 100 spread. It's always going to depend on price and what the individual's doing, but it's not a bad start to be in. Extra saying people forget that the parameters BTC had when it achieved $20,000 per coin. Way more inflation and negative externalities than HEX. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, people, listen, people want to believe whatever they want to believe. They want to believe it's different, that Bitcoin's different, right? That we don't have to put up with the same stuff, right? But I mean, it's all pretty similar. All right. I see Johnny joined us over here. And if he accounted for the OA staking all the OA HEX like the OA did, then he had to calculate ensuring he was comparable to the bond market. I don't know what you're talking about exactly. I guess I missed it. All right, but you can see what I'm seeing here on the old charts. The number of T-shares that are out there. We can go look at Quattrocincos by start. What have we been seeing? We're in February here. We got a good showing for February. 1,600, 1,700 T-shares in February that we're going to end up with. Maybe we'll squeak some more out here over the next day. Still lower than the 2K from December, a lot higher than January. But this is kind of what we're seeing. And so people who are willing to, take the gamble, the risk, they can go way out there and get those T-shares. I don't think we're seeing anything different in terms of stake links. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to change. I always laugh when I giggle when we talk about this, when people talk about the lockup and the 9 years, 9.2 years. Well, remember, these are um, average of those stakes that are still open, right? So all the shorties are out of here; they're not in there. So when we go look at the created T-shares, we had been seeing kind of a little increase recently. I thought that was pretty cool, but we get a little bit longer stakes on the Ethereum side at 4.4 years, and on I still have to change this title, but on in green the Pulse side is about 3.8 years, but it's increased a little bit, you know. Um, so, I still have the strong belief in the walled garden of HEX, right? Meaning we've got, some people that are interested in HEX staking and will continue to do it. And it's like perfectly okay that nobody else doesn't, as long as the other parts of the system are working where, meaning there are people that are buying and holding, there are people that are looking for short-term gains, and they're willing to speculate on what the OA will do. I mean, just last night, again, I was doing a look see on what the estimates might be. Let's see if I can pull up that real quick. What it would take. So I was just looking at Hex, kind of in a vacuum, but Hex itself, and just if we were to see Hex on Pulse receive something like 40, 42, 43 million in net buy pressure, Hex would go to all-time highs. Now, I don't know if that'll happen or not happen, right? I'm just saying that's what I think it would take, something like that, right? And so it's in a vacuum. Nobody else is selling it down. Nobody else is buying. But typically, when people see something moving in a direction, and there's some sort of an angle on that, then you get the speculators coming in. Of course, they're going to sell it down later, guys, right? Nothing's going to stay up forever, right? It doesn't always do that, right? I mean, Bitcoin came down as well, right? So things don't just go up, but you can have long periods, protracted periods of time where it increases. And so somebody starting the roll in a direction, whether it's on EHEX or PHEX, and starts increasing the price, a couple $1 million, 4X's, right? And, well, that doesn't have to be all from the same player, because there will be other market participants who will jump on that. And now all of a sudden, that initial little spike, it's getting fueled by the market speculation, right? And other people speculating, which means that whoever the market maker that wanted that to happen started doing that, they reserve a little bit of their value, and then because they're reserving their value, then they have more to play with later, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, it is, economics, right? I mean, somebody's got to be able to put this value up to buy all this stuff, or to absorb it off the market through liquidity, right? But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's very possible that bottoms are in. I mean, chart wise, we're seeing all sorts of indications that buy signals coming in on Hex and EHEX and Ink and Pulse and all this other stuff. So I mean, at least looking at the 365 day charts, and looking at the what we call the golden ratio multiplier, is indicating that there are good opportunities for accumulation. But like I said, somebody decides they want to go into a token at a very low price. They put $1,000 in, and you multiply that by 300. That's kind of life changing for most people. I think it's life changing. It's life changing for me. It would be life changing. So I'd be pretty excited about that. Okay. Hey, thanks, guys. I see you guys out there. I see SJ. You made it out here, too. How are you, SJ? Thank you for all that that packaging. I'm looking at one of those pads right now. I got one right here. All right, let's see here. All right, so we did a look ahead. And again, as we go into the future, we were talking about the T-shares being super expensive. Yeah, they'll be more expensive in HEX. I expect there's going to be more people, building T-shares as well. I know I talk about it like we don't have to have it exactly, but there are some of us that are building them, so they are building up that cachet. Maybe it'll become a big thing again. Just have to wait and see. But currently, it's not the narrative. It's not the big narrative for sure. But going out into the future, we start looking out towards 2040. We're looking at 80,000, 76,000 hex per T-share, somewhere in that range. Somewhere in that range. Again, if we take a look at our T-shares and where they line up. Again, remember the OA's got big slugs of T-shares in each one of these years, right? So a lot of these are, built in, and it's the OA. And of course, it's cumulative because, its last stake ends in 2040, but each of these is all backed up into here, into this 43 million, right? Now, I'd have to go do the math on it to figure it out, but I'm guessing, actual T-shares of people, other users is low. Yeah, certainly below 10 million. So you're really looking at, a drawdown year over year of the T-shares to almost nothing. So people who do want to get HEX and have HEX T-shares, they can get them now, for sure. For sure. All right. What else? Let's see do I have my, I think I closed my chicken chart. It might not be here. Let's see, chicken wing chart. We'll do the chicken wing chart before we close out. See what we're looking at. All right. Whew. Man, those chicken wings are expensive now. Let's see, what date is this? Did I get the February 24th? So it's a couple days lagged here in 26. But currently, roughly, in the U.S., 1.1 million hex. Excuse me, 1.1 million pulse for a order of chicken wings. I bet you chicken wings went up because I haven't updated this a couple of years, and I know prices have been going up. There's going to be more than this, but at least assuming it was $10 for an order, it would be 1.1 million pulse in the U.S. and in Mexico, 828,000 pulse. It's for the chicken wings and the chicken chart. All right. Yeah, I think SJ positivity is a choice. Is a choice. Is a choice. So we can choose to be positive. I got my days too, but I'm choosing to be positive, and I think other people should work on being positive. And for anybody who's interested, go check out the effing hangout tonight. SJ, a wild SJ, will be doing it. We'll be hosting, so you can come watch that, see what's up. And yeah, the chicken wing chart was just trying to put it in perspective. I know we're all I know that a lot of us are kind of beat down over all this time, but and you kind of get this price bias going on in your head. Like it can never be higher again, but things are changing on the chain. We've seen some people move and leave and new entries and stuff, right? So, these prices will change. That's one thing you can count for. You can do that. So we can go from there. But yeah, that's it. All right, my friends. Well, listen, you guys stay crispy like the chicken. So that's how I introduce myself, crispy like the chicken. And we'll see you next time. And, share this around to some people interested in HEX. And if you want to join the old HEX, join the old HEX walled garden, just come on in. We got a seat for you. we got a seat for you. You got plenty of room in the walled garden of HEX. And so with that, we're going to say goodbye with T. Let's see, he's always saying there's a buy signal. So,
yo, T, urgent HEX buy signal. Chart's flaming hot.
Golden ratio, huh? That's how legends stack T-shares.
Get them while they're crispy, folks. This window won't stay open long.
Stake smart, win big. Time rewards those who act.
Stay crispy, Hexicans.
You gotta move it, move it. Feel the rhythm of the blockchain.